Hello, everybody. I got to pull my DJ microphone over here so I can talk to everybody out loud. Welcome to the Art of Inspired Selling. I think everybody knows me by now. This is season 3, episode 2 of the Art of Inspired Selling. And I think we're on about guest number 67 or 68. So I love the fact that I've continued on with this show and we keep showing up to bring you value every Wednesday at 1 o'clock p.m. Pacific time. So today I am going to bring a guest who has 2 Amazon bestsellers, right? Not just one, 2 Amazon bestsellers. And he's coming to us to talk about how to grow your business, even if you have a small email list. Now, if you I have some neighbors today. They're blaring music and dropping things on my head. So hopefully we're not going to have a big interruption. But I'm going to read a little bit about my next guest, who's Robbie Samuels. He is a professional speaker, business growth strategy coach, virtual event design consultant, and I bet that skill set was awesome for last year. Executive Zoom producer, MC, podcast host, author, and virtual presentation skills trainer. Since 2016, he has hosted the On the Schmooze podcast. And since March 2020, a weekly hashtag no more bad Zoom virtual happy hours. And I'm likely leaving something out, which he said, which I can totally relate to, right? As a business growth strategy coach, he helps clients discover likely prospects who already know, like, and trust them so they stop struggling to launch their offer. We hear that problem all the time. Please join me in welcoming, all the way from his home in the Philadelphia suburbs, a TEDx speaker, an HBR contributor, a Scrabble champion. Where's my Scrabble candy? I got some for Christmas. And at least in his own home, he says, let me bring on my next guest, Robbie Samuels. Now, you guys, I want to remind you as I bring Robbie on that we love, love, love to chat live with you. So, chat, drop your message in the comments. Make sure you're giving Restream permission to post your name. And let's get started, Robbie. So happy to have you today. How are
Thanks for
you
inviting me.
doing?
Yeah, it's awesome.
Great, great. So we had a little chance to chat. It sounds like you're having already a Friday on a Wednesday.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, so let's start out with some happy talk. One of the questions I ask every one of my guests when they come on is what inspires you to get up and do what you do? You've been an entrepreneur now for a while. You made it through COVID. I'm starting to read your book. You've made some pivots and you've adjusted. What inspires you to keep serving your target market and the customers that you currently have?
Well, I work with inspiring entrepreneurial women and a few awesome men. And that really is a lot of inspiration for me. When people have that awakening, that moment of, oh, I can do this, when they realize that what was holding them back is something that they can push past.
Mm-hmm.
I love the ripple effect. I love knowing that what I'm doing is helping them do what they do, which means that we're having a positive impact all together. And that's just really inspiring.
That's great. That change, right? That transformation. People don't like that buzzword, transformation. So
Mhm.
I do. Because you can see it. Sometimes you can just see the client just like open up and it's amazing. And then the results happen, right? It's
Yeah.
here. And in your book, you talk about that, right? As one of the very first things that we have to deal with. Like, this is my biggest roadblock.
Right.
This person that lives in between these cute little ears, you know? And so tell me a little bit, when you work with clients on mindset, tell me a little bit about that. Like, what are some of the first things that you do with them?
Well, I think that a lot of this is reframing what problem to even solve. And the title of my book is Small List, Big Results: Launch a Successful Offer no matter the size of your email list. And originally, it was going to be subtitled Leverage Your Network to Grow Your Business. But the people I'm working with don't know that networking is a solution because they don't really understand what the problem is. And the idea is to give people the opportunity to really understand the bigger picture of what the problem is, and then from there we can help them have that transformation.
So I wrote some questions for you as well, and I know we did. So today we're going to talk about, right, the small list, big results. Before I get into the questions, let's just welcome some people because we have people tuning in from 4 different
Great.
platforms. We've got some people from your Facebook group. We've got people on my Facebook group. We've got people on my business page, LinkedIn. I hope that you're there as well. They quit showing up on my stream, so please tell us who you are that's watching. Tell us where you're coming from. Tell us if you have any questions. We want to give you a shout out and bring you your comments on to this show. If you would like to not be anonymous. But not everybody says there might be a book inside them, right? You've had 2 now. How is that process of writing the book? Like, did you just wake up and decide you were going to write an Amazon bestseller? Did you journal? Did you time block? Did you have a writing coach? Did you publish on your own? What's a little bit of that journey before we get into the meat? You guys, I want everybody to hear that, but this is important too.
I by no means identify as a writer. I'm not a person who thought I had strong writing skills. I now think I'm a fine writer, but it's not the first mode that I choose. I'm much more likely to think about speaking or video kind of as a possibility of communicating. Essentially, I started by blogging a lot of content, hosting master classes around content, workshopping the content. The first book, which is Croissants versus Bagels, Strategic, Effective, and Inclusive Networking at Conferences, that one really was a culmination of everything I had been teaching for years. So I had this talk called Art of the Schmooze that I had done for, by that point, probably 6, 7 years. And so it was really about capturing all those lessons and stories and key points. The second book I actually started working on in 2018, again, doing those master classes, inviting people into these conversations. I put it aside and picked it up again in 2021 because I was able to, as you sort of mentioned, I became a virtual event design consultant. I was not that prior to 2020. I was really focused on the in-person experience, but people stopped going to events in that way. And so all the things I was known for, eye contact, business card, shaking hands, body language, March 2020, nobody needed. So my second book was really an answer to the question I kept getting, which was, Robbie, how did you do that? I had built a thriving 6-figure company in 8 months using all new revenue streams in the middle of a pandemic. And then in 2021, doubled by mid-year. I doubled my income from 2020, was able to buy a home. So like all these things were happening. So I am a business growth strategist. It's one of the many hats. And I was coaching entrepreneurs in the middle of the pandemic happening. I had about a dozen entrepreneurs that I was working with through a company. And when people started reaching out to me about pick your brain and all of that, I was able to turn those calls into research calls. So my second book really was documenting all those best practices. So in some ways, I feel called to create these pieces of content to give people access. And I also truly believe, Catherine, that the people that are going to buy from me need to be educated about what the problem really is. That no one's going to want the big solution that I can offer them if they're still stuck thinking the problem is this little thing down here.
Something
they're
else.
just not aware of, like, if they're thinking little symptoms, they're not going to be aware of the bigger problem. I can't offer them the bigger solution.
And Bethany, I put your comment up so much. So shout out to Bethany, who's watching us from the DC area. She got it down. We could see her name, but she said she just published a short ebook called Stop Decision Fatigue. And that's kind of what you're talking about, right? Is blocks that keep us back from making decisions or just identifying what the block is for not just making decisions, but, well, I guess each growth step has to have a decision-making tree and process in it, right? Yep. So I wrote down some questions here. Are you struggling to connect with your ideal clients? And I liked how you talked about that in the first part of your book, right? You're serving my people, right? Women, female entrepreneurs over 50. I'm in that category, right? So there's a lot. I'm mid smack in that category, as a matter of fact. And I know a lot of those women as well. And there's a lot of different categories. And you said that I'm a slow learner, so I resonated with your story. I don't know why I am. I keep moving forward. That doesn't mean it stops me from moving forward. But kind of that aha moment that you had, that you were already serving those people, but that's not
Yeah.
really who you thought you were going to serve. Tell me a little bit about that.
I can tell you a little story, but I also have some
Yeah.
slides to
Oh, sure.
illustrate this point. Essentially, I was being kind of oblivious to who was already reaching out to me for support, services, advice. Um, I didn't realize what they all had in common. I didn't think of them as a whole. I didn't see what the common denominator was. I mean, oblivious. This was happening for a while. And I would say that, and the first step was for me to understand the demographics. And the
Hmm.
second step, which really took even a few more years, I feel like the demographics started first, but the psychographics are something that I started unpacking in 2021 in relation to the second book. And so that's where I'm able to say that I help inspiring entrepreneurial women and a few awesome men, because suddenly there are a few awesome men that are reaching out to me. And so it's not this super clear demographic. And I also know entrepreneurial women in their 50s and beyond who do not need my help. So it's not just a demographic, it's the other part of the
Yes.
sentence that's really important. The the impact and income they're trying to create, the idea that they want to have legacy, or they want to develop something new or create value, but that they're forgetting they have this network to lean into. They feel like they're a novice. They feel like they're starting over. So, may I have permission to? Is it okay if I share a little
Yes.
something?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
So I also wanted to say that I hate this question about ideal client. I mean, when you're first starting out, it's an annoying thing because you haven't been paid yet. And even after you've been paid for a while, if your client list is kind of scattered, you sign up for some sort of program, and that's the first thing they ask you. And you don't know. And they're like, Starbucks or Dunkin'? Do you listen to podcasts or audiobooks? And you're like, I don't know. It's just making things up. So here is an example of how you might think about this. So these are the three different categories. For expertise, this is the thing you just know. This is the thing you've been trained on, experienced in. This is the knowledge you have, and you absolutely 100% can like rattle off whatever it is. The passion is about the things you care so much about you would do for free. You just love this. This is like me right now talking to you. I love
Hmm.
this. Then we've got impact and income. Notice they are together. I cannot decouple them because, yes, we want to have a big impact. I think that's the kind of people you and I both work with. But if we don't make money, we don't have a business.
We have
So,
a
and
hobby.
that really limits the amount of people we can help. So we have to have both those things happening together. But what if you only have two? What if you only have expertise and that impact and income? That leads to burnout because you don't love what you're doing. And often we have some people like this on our client roster, possibly because it's something we were known for. So when I left my day job, I was known for fundraising events and for fundraising. So I got all these inquiries about creating fundraising plans, running fundraising events. And I basically asked my wife if it would be okay if I turned it all down because it would take me away from the thing I really was passionate about doing, which was on networking and business growth strategy. Because if I got sucked back into that world, I don't think I ever would have escaped. So that is the burnout you could experience if you're not careful. Trap is when you've got this amazing passion for something, but you don't really have the knowledge to back it up. Someone's willing to pay you, even if it's something you love and you really want to do for your business, it's going to cost you some other thing. Like there's going to be something else you cannot do. You cannot build your website and write a TEDx talk while you are trying to put the right amount of time in to serve this client well, because it's going to take more and more effort. And then hobby is when there's something you do for free that you're really knowledgeable about. You just never think to have anyone pay you. Maybe you're a garden enthusiast, and your whole neighborhood asks you all spring to help them set up their gardens, and you run around doing that. Maybe there's some sort of revenue idea in there that you are overlooking. And a lot of times that is happening. So your ideal client is right in the middle. It's somebody who wants your expertise in a topic that you are passionate about, and they understand the value. They see the value so much so that they want to pay you. And just one caveat before we move off this, which is be careful that you are not too generic about how you describe the demographic of your ideal client, because leaders, women, entrepreneur, too vague, and it's not really going to serve you. And honestly, a lot of people don't even see themselves as leaders. As someone who hosts a podcast on that topic, I'm always shocked. I, invite someone to be on my show because I think of them as a leader, and they go, well, I don't know if I'm a leader. I'm like, wow. So sometimes, you really have to have enough adjectives to help people see themselves. Our words and our language has to really have other people be like, oh, you're talking about me. So when I say entrepreneurial women in their 50s and beyond, looking to grow their impact and income, but not realizing they could leverage an existing professional network to do so, that resonates with people. That's when they're like, oh, you're talking about me. Right. And then of course people are like, how did that happen? And I'm like, y'all found me. I just paid attention eventually.
Yes. And I love the fact that you were surveying people before and after and building as you went along, which is so important. Sometimes I know I do it, and I love to be honest and share my vulnerability on my own show publicly. But I have questionnaires that I have my clients go through before they work with me, and other content that they share. And then when I start to write content, sometimes I forget to go back to that. Everything I need is already right in front of me. Right. So all of those swipe files and all of those things that we gather and that we write, we need to make sure that we revisit them. And before we move forward, check in with the voice of customer data, and you'll see things, right? You'll see trends, and you'll see words, and you'll see things that everybody's saying the same exact words over and over and over again, and you're like, oh my gosh.
Well, an example from the book is, let's say you're creating a program for women who are fatigued, and you keep saying, it's for fatigued women. Women are fatigued, 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 and fatigued. And then you interview 20 people, and 14 women say exhausted, and none of them say fatigued. Maybe you have a more clinical understanding of this problem. Maybe you have an expert kind of view, but that's not how people view it themselves. And so there's a mismatch. Sometimes it's subtle like that. It's just a language mismatch. Sometimes, ultimately, I would say the problem that we face as entrepreneurs is that we think we know. And we go, I don't know, in our little basement, in our back cave, and we build something. We create some kind of solution, and we emerge sometime later, and we bring it to the market. And the market says, who are you? What is this? I don't need this. And we're what? Because we're so certain. But what we missed isn't that our list isn't big enough, because that's usually the diagnosis that people are like, well, I don't have a big enough list. You didn't invite people into the process as you were building it. You didn't invite likely prospects to invest in and help you co-create it. And so that is so the little p problem that people think they have is, I don't have a big enough list. The bigger problem is you didn't invite people into the process, and you thought you knew. And I don't really know anyone who's an expert thought leader on type of entrepreneur who's missed doing this. Like, I've done it. I don't know. It's like this. I get it. We're like so certain. And I actually could share a little bit with you about why that doesn't work. Would that be okay?
Oh, perfect. Yes, we want, and I'm actually in the process of doing exactly that right now, inviting people in. I'm like,
brilliant. So this is going to be so helpful for you.
It's so good. So yes, all of you wonderful people out there that have signed up for this special program that I'm doing to get feedback on everything I'm doing and every word.
Brilliant.
This is why. Let's see it.
All right. So.
Oh, I got to share.
This is why your likely prospects don't realize that they need whatever your solution is. So we've been talking about this a little bit, but I want to just kind of really get this out there. So you've got that little p problem. That's some people have this and they call it a symptom aware. There's like a whole awareness.
Yes, I teach on that. Yes.
Right. So, but honestly, I think the people who are having this symptom don't think of it as a symptom. They think of it as a problem. And so I call it little p problem aware, because it's the problem they think they have. What they're missing is the bigger problem that you as the expert understand. You understand this bigger view. And I think that all of our marketing, all of our efforts, all of our outreach, all of our conversations should be about bridging the gap between the little p and big P. Because once people really start to think, oh, wow, I didn't realize that's what I need to be tackling, that's the issue, now they become more open to whatever your solution is. Because if you haven't done that first part and you're running around with a solution, telling people how great the solution is, it's like you're running around with a pogo stick, telling people to jump on it 5 times in order to grow their business. It just literally does not make sense to that person. And so once they understand what the bigger issue is and believe that maybe this could help me, and they start to see you as that guide, the person who can truly help them, implement whatever the strategies are and get over all those challenges along the way, that is when they get sort of excited about it. Now, the final question is going to be the cost of inaction. If they now know about the bigger problem, before they didn't, right? Now they know, and they know there's a possible solution, and they know you're available to help them guide through that solution and enacting that solution. They now are deciding not to do it. Like if they don't do it, it's a decision. And there is going to be a cost of inaction that's the point. Like when that cost of inaction is too great, they come to you asking, can we work together? And that's a journey. That whole thing is a journey. And it really starts with us understanding that when we sell to people, they don't hear us if we aren't speaking their language. So the research calls and the waking up your network and that whole process that I talk about in the book is really about extracting that problem language so we can better serve people and have them understand that's what we're trying to do.
Yes. Yes. And I know a lot of copywriters dive deep into that so they can so elicit the emotion, right? It's you, but and what the wording I like to use, which the copywriting classes that I take, that you now become a conversion coach for your prospects or for your clients. And you can do that on the phone on a sales call. But if you're doing it through messaging, if you're doing it through content, if you're doing it through email marketing, it's the same thought process, right? You're getting them to think about what it is.
I'm doing it right now.
Yeah.
I can't sell a solution to an audience that doesn't understand they need it, right? So the book, everything I've done since, all the interviews, it's just like if people don't know, they really just don't. And I could run around with a pogo stick, but they're just gonna look at me a little cockeyed, like that doesn't make any sense.
Yes.
And they're not gonna refer me. They're not gonna understand who it's for, right? So it's that mismatch is the reason we all feel really demoralized. We think though, the self-diagnosis tends to be, my list wasn't big enough. And by the way, big enough is in how you feel about your list. Because, I could say 5,000 and you could think big list or small list, depending on who you are. Someone might see 5,000 and be like, wow, that's amazing. And someone else would be like,
Yeah. I used to have a brick and mortar store, and I would email my list, and small list, right? Every time I emailed it, I got new business. So you just have to have your right list. So yes, somebody's saying if you want to get a copy of your book, it's here, smalllistbigresults.com.
That is Paya Robbins, my assistant.
Hi, Paya.
She jumped on. That's awesome.
Nice to have you here. And look, she got LinkedIn to work. So that's awesome. Now we know that people can comment with this. All right. So we had some other questions we were going to ask. Let's see. Is the size of your email list the reason entrepreneurs struggle to sell their new offer? And you were just talking about that.
Yeah. Yeah. So no.
Right. And then how many, here's a good one, right? Are there rules of thumb about how many contacts you should have before you launch an offer? So that is a common question that I've heard as well. Like, what do I have? How many lead magnets? What should I do? So Thea says hi. Okay.
So yeah, I think that when we're talking about contacts, I want to be clear about whether we're talking about how many people are on your subscription email list or how many people you can have a conversation with and invite into your offer, right? These are different things, and they're not all going to be from your email subscription list. In fact, all right. So here, let's do this.
Let's see what Bethany's question is here. So what you're saying is it's more important to get the right message than to have a specific length of email.
I like that. Yes. So here we go. If you could let me share on this. Here's a belief that I have. You've already met 80% of the people you need to know to be successful. Feel free to screenshot that, post it somewhere. Got my hashtag and my tag down there in the bottom corner. Just grab it. Here's how we think about things, right? So we've got our email list. I'm now realizing that should say list, not contacts. I will fix that. This is why I like doing these slides. So you have your subscription email list, and I put 250 down because it's small, but it's where all of us start. Like we all start with 2. You and your mother. I don't know. 2 people. Eventually we grow it. but we've maybe forgetting we've got LinkedIn contacts. And our LinkedIn contacts are going to be probably more than maybe our email list, because you've been nurturing people. You got all kinds of people from years ago, different jobs you've had, and there's a way to download those contacts. Even it's pretty easy to do on LinkedIn, and you probably have even more people on Facebook than you do on LinkedIn because you've been on there longer, and it's from all different areas of your life. And then what about your phone contacts? Right, that's interesting because think about that. Like, you've had this phone for a while, but it's that every time you got a new device, you imported old contacts. I've realized I have people from 12 and 15 years ago in my phone. And then you have your actual email contacts. These are the people who are in your email address book. You might have a frequently emailed list. You might have an address book of some kind. And when you really think about that, that's a lot of people. We're going to add these up, right? It's 3,500 people. And so when we're talking about how do we start building our list, that's the people you're starting with, is really understanding it's a wider universe. And then, of course, you've got to figure out how to prioritize. And that's my whole wake up your network process. But I think when we think, oh, I only have 200 people on my email list, I can't blank. Honestly, when you get to 1,000 people, you're still going to think you don't have enough people. And when you get to 2,500 people, you're going to not have enough people. And there's always going to feel the need that the grass is greener somewhere else. Now, what is a big list? I think that's a helpful thing. We're talking about small lists.
I want to say real quick something, and
sure.
it goes back to my guest that I had last week on the show, in the last episode, Mario Martinez, where we were talking about omni-channel presence. So you may have 250 names on email, but how many of those people actually read your emails? They might have just got on that email list for your freebie and disappeared. Maybe their best way of communicating is on social media, or maybe their best way of communicating is through text message. Or maybe they really just want the only stop pattern they're going to have, or the pattern interrupt for them, is truly a phone call. So you've got to hit an omni-channel approach to make sure that you understand how you can reach your target market. So that's just the input I wanted to add to there.
Absolutely. I think that what I was going to say about big lists, because small is depending on the eye of the beholder, really, yourself. A big list to me is tens of thousands. And the way I would describe it is that it's like you own a fleet of helicopters. When you've got a lot of people on your list and you want to test an idea, you just toss that idea onto an email, and a tiny fraction have to say yes for you to have 10 people to run a pilot. A tiny, tiny fraction of 80,000, right? But when you have 250 people, and you're trying to find 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 people to be part of a pilot, it's a much heavier lift. And so part of what we're doing by having these research calls is we are refining the end product. We're understanding the language, we're all that stuff, but we're building a runway for our little tiny planes. The smaller our list, the smaller our planes. Needs a longer runway. We're getting people invested in the idea. We're getting people to sign off on the idea. We're getting people to think about co-creation. They're going to be more willing to either sign up or refer people. All that stuff doesn't happen if we stay in the dark. Like when I'm writing my book, I wrote my book very publicly each time. Like I had people waiting for the books to come out. And so that kind of idea of like co-creation and letting people into the process to get a better process, but also that's a big reason why I have 2 self-published books. Both had over 150 reviews within a week of launch date. I'm at like 175, 180 for my second book, which just came out October 31st. So these things work, whether it's a book, whatever the end product is. I say offer. It could be a course, a live program, a mastermind. Like it all depends, right? It could be a book, could be an app. It's that there's something you're trying to let the world as an offer. It's an invitation you're putting out into the world.
Yes. And they have to know about it somehow.
Yep.
You have to give out them. Okay, so what was another question? We had 3 that we were going to answer for sure. A lot of people launch an offer and then think about building their list. How do you build an audience before you create the offer?
Awesome. We can talk about that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. Okay, so how do you build an audience first? Because that's really, if you want to synthesize my book down to a sentence, build your offer before you make the ask. Right? Build the offer first before you try to sell anything. There's a certain amount of logic in this, but I also think people just are flummoxed. Like, how could you do that? You don't have a thing yet. And so we always think that when we reach out to people, we have to have an offer made. That's the mistake. I'm not saying you're going to create a list of people and then contact them and pitch them your idea, because really all they're going to respond to then is a narrow idea. Whereas there might be an adjacent thing going on that they really need help with. It's much more urgent. You're going to miss out on that entirely if you're like, what do you think about this? It's sort of like when designers say, what do you think? Do you like the green button or the blue button? It's like, you're not really helping them.
Exactly what was in my mind. The red
I was like, how does that help anybody?
Yeah.
So we really want to be focusing less on features and more on outcomes, the value they're going to get, the experience they're looking for, and understanding of the problems that people themselves feel need to be resolved. And so the process that I'll walk you through is about how do you wake up your network. Okay, so we were here, and I'm going to just move us forward one. All right, so I'm going to use LinkedIn as an example because it's very, very easy to basically download your contacts, but because it's built into LinkedIn. If you want to know how to do it, I would just suggest Googling the question because they change it slightly each time. But
yes,
it's pretty easy to do. You can scrape your contacts from Facebook and Instagram through third parties. I don't recommend any in particular. I think they're always changing. Ask around, you might find something. But now you've got this list. Now, if you hate spreadsheets, you don't have to do it. You can do paper and pen. I think it's a benefit to use a spreadsheet, and I'll show you why. But you've got this download, and you add 6 columns. The first column is going to be consider, and you're going to consider them if they would remember your name and you'd be happy to hear from them out of the blue. That's the whole criteria. They would remember your name and you'd be happy to hear from them out of the blue. And then we're going to move to connection. So there's connection, influence, and interest. Their connection to you is really a question of how likely are they to respond to your efforts to reach out to them. Absolutely, they're going to respond, or I'm going to have to work a little bit at this, right? Just a gut reaction. No half points, no zeros. And then we want to talk about their influence. And this is not a research project. This is just, again, based on your gut, your understanding of who they are in the world. If they got really excited about your idea, how many people could they tell? So Catherine, you could tell a lot of people. My mom, maybe one person, right? Just different things. She could tell one perfect person, but she's not having a platform, an audience, right? It's not a following. She doesn't have that. Now, you can also think about this. Where are you trying to have this impact? So if you're doing something very local and one of your contacts is the immediate past president of your local business chamber, they would have very high influence. But if your scale was to do something nationally or globally, that person's influence might be a lot less.
Okay, so the 1, 2, 3 is the scale of influence they would have to make
in
an
that
impact
setting.
on what? Okay.
In that setting, like for that context, right? Because you could use the same list again and redo the numbers 18 months from now when you have a different idea. So now we're going to get into their interest in your topic generally based on maybe their industry, their title, what you know about them, what they post on social, etc. Again, just gut instincts. Do you think that they definitely want to be interested in talk about this, or not really? I don't think so. And then you add them up, which is why I love spreadsheets, because there's always a formula way to do this. And if the number equals less than a 5, so a 4 or below, I want you to go back to the consider column and change that to a Z, right? Because we want to snooze them. And in fact, on the next thing, we can sort the sheet to move all the Z's to the bottom, because we don't want to delete them because they still meet that initial criteria of they would remember your name and you'd be happy to hear from them out of the blue. And you might have a different idea that you want to run past them later on. And so you don't want to lose them entirely. And so once you have all these numbers, now it's a question of how to assign some categories. So the categories are the likely prospects and the referral partners, and which could also be fellow experts. And I can draw a distinction about that. Or it's someone who you want to have coffee with. So the likely referral partner is someone who has a lot of influence. You're a great example, right? You have a lot of influence and you clearly have an interest in this. So you're a perfect person to have a conversation with. You're also a fellow expert because you do this kind of work, right? So we could be having a conversation about where do you see gaps? What are people's needs? Who are you serving? All that. So there could be some overlap with that. The likely prospect has high interest and their influence is not as high. But then there are people that you're just super excited to see their name pop up and they don't really fit either one of those, but you just really want to hang out with them. So that would be the people you'd have coffee with. And you don't want to over index on those people, because I think it's a natural thing to feel like I'm more comfortable talking to fellow experts and referral partners and coffee chats than prospects. If you do that, you're going to have a lot of data, but no one actually in your pipeline. So I'd
Here's a good
recommend
question.
2/3.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, and I'll comment on this after you take a shot. How do you handle opt-in laws as you're building out your list? This type of a list, right?
You're not adding people to your email list. You're just putting them on a spreadsheet to have a conversation with them. There's no
Prospecting
opt-in.
list. Yes.
They're just, you're reaching out to them. If they're interested, they're going to join your email list. If they're not interested, they're not going to join your email list. Like, yeah.
One thing to remember, what's the definition, Robbie, of business? Are you in business? If you're in business, you're looking for a profitable relationship.
Yeah. Well, you have to sell something.
I mean, you're either selling. I made a LinkedIn post, right? There's only a certain number of reasons you would connect with people, right? Unless you're just there to be a social butterfly, and you're not going to sell anything, and you're not going to grow your business, and you're not going to grow your friendship, whatever. I don't know why you would be there if you weren't in business, but yeah, you need to look for the positive business impact in everything that you do. Is having a conversation with Robbie for an hour going to have a positive impact on me? Yes, I am bringing value to my audience and to my reach. His book, I downloaded his book. It's great. I encourage you to do the same. You're going to learn. You're going to move the needle. Could we be referral partners? Absolutely. We can refer business back and forth. So you're not going to be spamming them. You're going to be providing value, and you're going to be genuinely interested in that person.
Yeah, developing a relationship. And now, ultimately, the goal is to identify 20 to 30 people that you will have a conversation with over the next 6 to max 12 weeks. That's it. And 2/3 of them should be likely prospects, because you're not building a pipeline if you don't emphasize that part of the equation. And if you do that, and actually have these conversations and record them and transcribe them, and all that technical stuff that Zoom actually does pretty simply for you, and you dive into that and you look for the themes, you will see things you hadn't seen before. You will discover that the mode, like you're like, I really want to run a mastermind. Well, it turns out everyone needs training. Maybe a mastermind's not a good idea. Like, let me start with a training program and then I can build to a mastermind. Like, there could be a mode. I've had people discover that the people they're talking to just want someone to text them every day to remind them to do XYZ. Like, they were ready to build up this whole course. And it was really like, here's the 5 things you have to do every day. I'm going to text you for a week and you're going to create a habit out of it. Like, honestly, sometimes we overthink this. We pay all this money. I'm talking about having some kind of conversation that leads to you understanding. Now, there's a mistake that I think a lot of people make, which is they give away free advice. So I have this idea of 3, not free. Okay. How many people, and I'm really curious if people are going to comment on this, how many times have you had a hour of free conversation? Here's an hour of free advice, and you feel good and they feel good. And you're like, oh, that was really good. I feel like a good thing. But then they hire someone else. You know what happened? You didn't give them a strategy. You gave an hour's worth of free tactics, and they filled up their little notepad, and they can't really even understand their notes. And people don't take quick action on free. So a few weeks later, they discover this. They can't understand their notes. They feel bad they didn't take action sooner. They don't want to bother you, because you were so generous, to help them decipher their notes. So they eventually ask someone else in their network to help them, and that's the person they hire. And then, even when they see you, they avoid you, right? So you don't want that. You don't want that. I'm suggesting that you invite people to come with 3 scenarios, 3 examples, 3 questions, 3 challenges as a likely prospect that around your topic. Now, you're going to spend 5 minutes doing catch up because you haven't talked in a while, but it's your job to move the conversation forward. If you want to keep having catch up, schedule another time with them in the moment and say, it's been so much fun to reconnect about this, but I want to make sure we get to this stuff. So let's make sure we schedule another time. Did you bring me 3 questions, 3 scenarios? Right. And then don't answer those 3 questions right away. Ask them why those 3 questions. What have you tried? What's been the impact? How are they affecting you? How important to you is that you fix this? What do you think would work? Why hasn't it worked? Right. Like, just coach them through. What are you doing? You're moving them from that little P problem aware to the big P problem aware. And they're like, oh, if they leave that call a little unsettled, you've actually done your job. In the last 10 minutes, give them max 2 things to take action on after the call. Basically, it's sort of like, based on what you shared and what I've experienced with other folks, other people I've worked with, other clients, whatever you want to say, I think there's 2 things you could try doing over the next few weeks just to see if you can get a little traction and moving in the right direction. And I'm not saying this is exactly what you need, because when I work with people, I do a deep dive strategy session. I can't know, exactly what you need in 15 minutes. But here's 2 common things I think would really help you. And if you have any struggles along the way, hit any road bumps, just reach out to me. I'm happy to, point you along the way. You're inviting them to build a relationship with you. You're not confusing them. You're not building their brain to like a zillion ideas. You're leaving them feeling like, oh, wow, there's more I didn't know. Well, now if Robbie knows the problem, I wonder if Robbie has any solutions that I'm not aware of. They're curious. And that's how you would want to leave them on the beginning research call. You gather the data, you figure out what the promise or the outcome of your pilot's going to be. You reach back out to a handful of those same people and you say, hey, there's this thing you said that really stuck with me. Could we chat again? I've moved a little further on this idea. And I think that some people get kind of stuck on how to set up these calls. So I'm going to give you the exact language.
You guys, this is going to be good.
Okay. This is the first phone call. I think everyone overthinks this. This is how do you schedule via email or via PM or LinkedIn chat or whatever, that first phone call. Don't make it 6 paragraphs. Don't include your link to your booking software. Super simple. I'm working on something new and I need to test my assumptions. I thought based on your experience with XYZ, you'd have helpful feedback. Can we set up a time to chat? That's it. And I think that, when we get kind of, I don't know, like we build it to make it too big, we resist doing it. We push it off. We don't get around to it.
And let me just say that was fabulous. But you guys make sure that that's true. Make sure that you really are building something, or you're testing some messaging, or you're doing something. Don't use that as a fake excuse to get somebody on a phone call to sell them something.
Well, no. So this is to set up the first research call, right?
Yeah.
No, this is because you have an idea.
Yes.
You do not turn around and sell them anything on this call. You're not pitching them. You don't have a fully formed plan. You go in with curiosity, open to learning. You will learn so much. And you talk to a dozen people, it's going to change things. You talk to 24 people, really going to blow you out of the water. And you're going to have, in the end, how many people do you need for a pilot? 6, 8, 10, no more than 12, no fewer than 4. That's it. So it's not about the size of your email list. It's whether you take the time to have these conversations to build the thing that people really know they want and need. And then they'll tell you whether or not it's going to work. They'll give you the feedback along the way. I just think people overthink this whole process.
And also, how are you coaching your people into handling pricing questions?
Well,
when they've gathered their research, now they're putting it in a little bit of a bow. There's so many gurus out there that say so many things. What is your
what's my thing?
Yes.
So you have to charge for your pilot. If you don't, you're not testing the validity of anything, because there's a lot of us who really like entrepreneur TV. So don't add to that. There are times I do free things. I'm not saying never do things for free, but if you're really trying to test whether this is an idea worth building on, there's got to be a charge. Now, it's not going to be the full fee that you'll eventually, you're going to do 5 sessions and eventually it's going to be 3 months and eventually it's going to be 6 months. Eventually it's going to be a year. I would say roughly $100 a session. Something to think about. Minimum 2 hours. Maximum, I would say 6 2-hour sessions or 6 90-minute sessions in consecutive weeks. You want it to be tight. You want it to be a tight amount of time. When you grow this and iterate it, you'll maybe make it every other week so that people have time to do exercises. And you're right, it's different. That's part of the value of it being a longer program, is there's more time. And no, this is really get in. What is the minimal amount of time needed for people to get the results that you can offer them? The promise. Now, this is not the big promise, but there's something people can get. I mean, even right now, we just did this call in like 40 minutes. There are things that I know people got from this conversation. That is a minimally viable outcome that I can promise everyone's going to get if they're paying attention. So what if people do a little bit of work? They're going to get a different result. Mm-hmm. And that to me is the pilot. So, $500 for 4 to 6 sessions kind of thing is what I think about. And because if you charge that, which is pretty real money, you could then leverage that into the bigger offer. It's a lot easier to go from $500 to, I don't know, $1,500 than it is to go from $100. $100 for 5 sessions. Please come. And like, no one believes the value. So that's what I would say. And I don't, you just want to test something. And if you overshoot the moon, you'll learn to pull it back. But if you're under, no one's going to ever give you more money.
Right. Yes.
No one's be like, that was silly. Why'd you only charge $100?
They could. And then, who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows? Well, Robbie, thank you so much. Before we wrap, is there anything that you're particularly working on right now? Is there a new launch? Is there something you're testing? Is there any link that we want to share in the chat?
Absolutely. So it happens that January 22nd, I'm hosting a full day workshop on Zoom called Idea to Offer Workshop. And it is taking people through all these concepts with lots of breakout rooms for people to discuss how to implement it for their own business. There'll be breaks and all that. The promise of the outcome of this is that people are going to get their head wrapped around how they initiate this for their own business. They would have a plan. And then that leads people, if they're interested in continuing the journey with me, into a 12-week idea to offer incubator. You're going to find this out at robbiesamuels.com/idea, the number 2 offer. robbiesamuels.com/idea to offer. And Paya has already.
I'm like, where's Paya? I'm trying to type this in. Thank you so much.
Paya's already dropped it in.
Yay, she just made my life easier too. Here's Robbie's workshop right here. robbiesamuels.com/idea 2 offer.
Yeah, I have one other little giveaway, not giveaway so much as a thing that I want to share with people. That would be okay?
Yes.
All right. So a lot of times we're having just like chats with colleagues, and it's a catch-up call or a get-to-know-you call, and suddenly it turns into a possible sales call, and it's like, how do I bridge that? And that's usually when we give away a lot of free advice. When you're giving away a lot of free advice, and there's this moment where like, this could be a client, but like, we don't know how to do that. So we feel like, so we just give them free advice. So here is the language that I recommend that you use. And that is to say, I have so many ideas for you because you sound a lot like my clients. Would you like to hear what it would be like to work together? And
I have a client right now that needs to take a screenshot of that.
Take a screenshot of this. This magical question shifts the dialogue so that it's a permission. I've never heard anyone saying no to me or to anyone I've ever shared this with. By the time you've asked this question, you've already given them some free advice. They already feel like you understand them. The next thing you do, though, is not pitch your idea, not pitch your offer. You share a story about a client you worked with who reminds you of them and the outcome that client achieved by working with you. And then you ask the question, is that the kind of outcome you're looking for? So you kind of confirm up front, am I on the right track? And then you might say, would you like to hear more about how we did that? And you give them the broad strokes. I got to a point in a conversation doing this where I said, and it's a group, and she interrupted. She says, you know what? I don't want a group right now. I'm at a point where I want to go far and I want to go fast, and I don't want to wait. I want to just do it. Do you work one-on-one? And you have to be ready for that question. But a lot of these research calls that you do or these like turning the conversation, it'll create new revenue ideas you just never even thought about, because people will tell you, if you listen, they'll tell you exactly what they need. And the last thing I want to mention is that with my Small List Big Results book, you can get the Big Results Toolkit, which includes all the bonus content, there you go. You can bring that back up, smalllistbigresults.com, which shows people, all the screenshots I share with you about how do you take your list and all the spreadsheet. There are books all documented in that in those PDFs. So if you go to smalllistbigresults.com, that is one way to get to that.
That's awesome. All value. Great interaction. Bethany says, thank you so much. It looks like she had to leave. And as always, you guys know that the The recording is going to be on everywhere you want to find it. Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, Twitch. So we are there for you, and you could always revisit this. So Robbie, stay on while I wrap the show. I want to thank you guys. So the theme this month is sales. If you haven't noticed, it's sales. How do you transition your conversations? How do you make more money with a small list? What's a sales cadence and how do you move it forward? In December, we talked about mindset. What's a positive mindset and how do you have one? What are goal setting strategies that we can do? I'm leading you guys down this list and down a road to have a very successful business with all the different blocks. Remember, it takes time. This is a journey. Enjoy the journey. Have fun with it. Each day, get better at one more thing. Today, your mind was just blown by, I have a list. Oh my gosh, I have a list. I'm going to put it in a spreadsheet, or I'm going to hire a VA to put it in a spreadsheet. And then we're going to categorize it. And then I'm going to think about the different conversations I'm going to have with each of those categories of people. And then I'm going to intentionally make more calls, make more outreach, because if you're going to grow your business, if you're going to grow revenue, you have to ask for the business and you have to get in front of people, and you can't sit behind your screen and play on social media. You actually have to sell and you actually have to interact with people. And that's the name of the game. Yes? Okay.
100%.
All right, you guys, thank you so much for being here. We'll be back soon with another episode of The Art of Inspired Selling. Also, I want to remind you to join my Facebook group, which is the Sales Professionals group on Facebook, where we'll be giving master classes where we're going to dive deeper into some of these subjects, like we did with the repurposing content. The next one's going to be on publicity and how to actually show up in print. And so I invite you guys to be a part of that Facebook group where we will bring that exclusive information to you there. So stay on, Robbie. I will end the stream and I'll see you guys later. Thank you so